Hello, hello, and welcome to my thought on this very chilly Tuesday. And as I was walking outside, the sun was shining brightly, and I was thinking about the preconceived notion that we all have that when it's sunny and it's May, it's going to be warm. And it was sunny. I had to wear sunglasses, but it was freezing. And so I was thinking about all the crazy things that people believe, and we just take it for granted what we believe. And one of the things is when I was young, there was a man that put an ad in a magazine that said, "This is the last time, last chance, this is your last chance to send in your dollar." And he made a fortune because people just put a dollar in an envelope and they gave an address, sent it to that address. And of course, you got nothing. You got nothing because he didn't say there was anything. And I always remember the ad that said, "Everyone laughed when I sat down to play the piano. You too can laugh when I sit down to play the piano. Send your dollar in with an address." And he too made a lot of money. So I was thinking of all the things that we think is true. And one of the things that we believe is that if you feed children a lot of sugar, they're going to get a sugar rush. They're going to get hyper. And there was this wonderful comedian in San Francisco who used to say that he had custody of his children, his two girls, on weekends. And before he sent them home to the wife, whom he divorced, he fed them lots of sugar. And of course, we all laughed because we thought that would be make them very hyper and drive the mother crazy. But these are all the things that we really believe. One of the things that we think is that peanuts are nuts. They're not nuts, they're legumes. They're legumes. And that penguins are monogamous, they mate for life. Not necessarily. Some penguins really do get divorces. And then we've always said that dog years, 7 years of our life is 1 year for a dog. But that's not true either. It depends on the breed. I had one dog, Dorothy, who lived to be 19, and she was in good shape. And I used to say to her, "Dorothy, Dorothy, why are you so old?" And she would look at me and she would say, "Well, I don't know, why are you so old?" But she lived a very long time. Most of my dogs lived 13 years, which would be over 100 years in 7 years. If you say 7 years is a dog's lifetime, but I have my doubts, and it says it isn't true. Um, Fortune cookies. Everybody thinks that fortune cookies were invented in China, but they weren't. They were invented in America. All these interesting little facts. And there's a story about President Taft. The first bathtub was supposed to be put in the White House during the first bathtub in the White House was when President Taft was president. He was so fat that he got stuck in it. That's one of the stories that we always believed when I was a kid, and I don't know whether it's true or not. Um, uh, Let me see what there's. I think there's something like 30% of the population think that chocolate milk comes from brown cows. I love that one. They think that. And when I was young, my mother, when Asian flu was going around, my mother insisted it was the Russians that came and dropped the virus all over us. And we're finding something similar now when we're blaming the Chinese. And you can't blame a nation for a virus. A virus an infection. It's not an infection, but it's a little object that a country didn't drop it on us. It came, and there has been President Trump stopped all traffic into the United States from China because he's blamed China for the pandemic. And actually, most of the cases that have been studied were from Europe and also from bats because bats carry the virus because they are mammals and they carry the virus. Um, and then there is the fallacy that you lose most of your body heat from your head, and so you have to wear a hat whenever you go out, and that's not true. You lose body heat from all over your body, not just from your head. And then we have finally believed, after we finally accepted the Earth wasn't flat, we thought that the Earth revolved around the sun. But actually, the Earth and the sun and all the planets revolve around the center of the solar system. That's how that works. These are all these things. But my mother, because my mother was mighty, when she said something to me, I always believed it. So she used to tell me that this was an old folk saying, old folk saying. She said, people in glass houses shouldn't take baths in the daytime. That was my mother. Actually, the saying, if you want to know the real saying, is people who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. But my mother convinced me, and I used to say that when I would go places. I would say, well, you know the old saying, people in glass houses shouldn't take baths in the daytime. So I am telling all of you that my mother's advice to all of you, and especially on this cold, cold May day, is if you live in a glass house, don't take a bath in the daytime. And thank you for joining me for my thought.